welcome to the Hockey Hub Podcast, Episode 8. You can call it the Cam Neely episode. Adam Pellerin alongside Andy Brickley. Happy Halloween, Brick.
Yeah, you don't mind if I call it the Ken Hodge episode, do you?
You could do that. You could call it the Peter McNabb episode.
Very
as
good.
well.
One of my favorite people of all time.
Yeah, love Maxie. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll call it any one of those three episodes as we welcome you to the 8th edition of the Hockey Hub Podcast. And yeah, happy Halloween, Brick. I don't know if you're going to be dressing up this year because you're going to be in the booth with Judd.
Yeah, not this year. In years past, certainly when I was playing at him, we had a lot of nice Halloween parties. Didn't necessarily have to fall on Halloween, but we had Halloween parties. Somebody would offer up their home for the evening, or maybe we would rent space. But when it's at somebody's house, it's a lot more convenient, a lot more fun, and a lot more personal, if you know what I mean. You could get away with a little bit more in terms of costumes, but a lot of fond memories of Halloween, but no dressing up this year. It's all business. Got to see these Bruins win some games.
Yeah, it would be nice to see them win some games. Just to stay on the Halloween theme for a second, Brick, scariest player you ever faced, and I'll put that in two different categories in terms of physical presence on the ice and maybe a scariest from a talent perspective.
All right, I'll start backwards. I'll go with the talent. There were times, Adam, when I had various roles when I was playing, particularly with the Bruins. There were years and stretches of years where I would be in an offensive role. I would play in the top six. I would play power play, and then one year we traded Stevie Kasper and Johnny Cuniff, the late Johnny Cuniff, who was one of my favorite people of all time, and impacted my career, by the way, in a positive way. He told Terry O'Reilly that, Brick can play defensive center. So then all of a sudden I went from playing left wing with Kenny Linsman and Keith Crowder to centering a checking line. And, there were nights where, and this is when Gretzky was in L.A. and Messier was still in Edmonton, and they came in back-to-back, like on a Thursday-Saturday situation. And those were my jobs. My job was to go against Gretzky for as much as I possibly could. We needed another centerman, usually Bobby Sweeney, because Gretz would play close to 30 minutes, and I wasn't going to play that. And then the following game was against Messier, and it was night and day in terms of how you had to guard these two guys or defend these two guys, and they were both scary in different ways. Wayne put so much fear in you that he was just going to flat out beat you, not necessarily one-on-one, beat you with a pass, a give and go. He would tempt you into making mistakes if you had the puck. And then Messier was kind of just the opposite. He would just look right through you. He'd give you that death stare, and he was Moose, right? He was Moose. That was his nickname. And he was scary physically at a high pace of play. So they were scariest. And Mario, I played with Mario, and I saw what he did to opponents. He put the fear of failure in a player that was trying to defend him. And Mario could physically beat you, in so many ways, one-on-one, more so than Gretzky ever could, because Mario was 6'6" and could skate. He had the reach, and he had the intelligence, he had the deception, and he had the shot. He had everything. Mario had everything, just didn't have the health, really, to challenge Gretzky's numbers. But those three players were the scariest in terms of my era. But as far as the physical scare, and intimidation was prominent back in the early 80s, mid-80s, maybe even as late as the early 90s. And there were some scary guys. I remember so I left school a year early. I left UNH a year early. And one of the first games in the American League, I'm sitting on the bench, and there was a fight, like very early in the game. It happened right in front of our bench. And it was Dave Brown against Archie Henderson. And I don't know if everybody's familiar with those two names. But Brownie that year in the American League had 35 majors, meaning 35 fights, 420 minutes, set the record, as a 20-year-old. And Archie was a veteran, tough guy, not a handsome fella either. And I say that lovingly. He was a teammate at one time. And both 6'6", and there was no strategy to that fight. It was just, I'm going to hit you and you hit me, and whoever hits last wins. And it was literally 4 feet from me, and I'm sitting there going, I left college for this?
And also grateful that you weren't on the other end of either of those fists.
Yeah, no, that was a little scary. And when I was playing early in my career, I was in the old Patrick division, and I was playing in Pittsburgh, and I had to go up against, like, Paul Holmgren. That was a little scary. Bobby Nystrom, that was a little scary, And then later in my career, you saw the Bob Proberts of the world come into the league. There were a lot of scary guys. There were a lot of tough guys, and there was a lot of intimidation, and there was a lot of glove dropping. And we had a 5-on-5 brawl one time at the Garden against Detroit. And I ended up hooking up with Brad Marsh, who I had known from my short time in Philadelphia when we were friendly. But I remember Stefan Quintal fought Bob Probert. And there weren't enough officials out there to break up all the fights that were going on. And that gets a little scary. When's it going to end and how's it going to end? So, yeah, there was fear at that time. And we could put a long list of scary guys together. I know Judd and I were just having a couple of laughs the other day, just going through and seeing when Berube came into town with Toronto. We just kind of looking up Craig Berube's career and how many fights. And, I think if you have 8 or 10 fights today in the league, this is how much the game has changed, you would lead the league. But these guys would regularly have 30 to 35 fights, 25 to 35 fights a year, and that's the way they made their living. That's scary.
Yeah, and you talked about Max Domi being in town, his dad, Ty Domi, right? I mean, just like it was just a different game back then, right?
It was,
so,
a lot of scary guys.
A lot of scary guys. So that's our Halloween themed segment, and I'll wrap it up this way as we transition to the Bruins, and they had a good time, right? And you talked about the Halloween parties and the Halloween themed stuff, and it was great. The Bruins visiting the children's hospitals, something that they do every year. They dress up in kids' characters and things. They also, they have a little fun themselves. We talk about team bonding, going out on road trips and stuff. Well, the team bonding is also, at home when you're, with your significant others and the families get together in the Halloween costumes. And, they had some Halloween costumes as well. I think we have some of those Halloween costumes. There we go. There you go. Big group photo, right? I see Kiss in there. That's pretty good. Looks like some of the young guys. You got Happy Gilmore in there as well, Tinkerbell. So it's a good opportunity. But I will say, one of my favorites is Connor Clifton and Matt Grzelcyk a few years back. You remember that costume, don't you?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, the Jack and Brick. Yeah, the Jack and Brick.
That was pretty creative. They did a nice job, and Jack and I took it in good humor. It was pretty awesome. I'll tell you. You mentioned this is the Cam Neely broadcast, the eighth episode, and Cam had a Halloween party at his house one time, and I went, and I can tell this story now because statute of limitations. So my brother-in-law was BPD, right? He was a Boston police officer, and at the time he was on the motorcycles, and he let me borrow his uniform, boots and all. I had the whole uniform, the boots, the helmet, the shades. He wouldn't let me take his weapon. I don't know why, but but I went to Cam's house early, and I got there early, and I went into the room where the bar was set up because I knew that's where everybody eventually would be, and I just stood over to the side, fully clad in BPD wear, and everybody thought I was on the job, that I was doing a detail. And I didn't say a word to anybody, and everybody was wondering where Brick was, and I was there the whole time.
I can't imagine that is okay with the protocol in terms of BPD, right? Is that you mentioned the statute of limitations? Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, yeah, good Halloween fun back in the day. Bruins hoping to have some Halloween fun of their own as we look ahead to the matchup against Carolina Hurricanes. We got a couple of games on the road, Brick. But let's go back to the game against Flyers. A 2-0 loss for the Bruins. It was 1-0 until the empty net goal at the end by Joe Farabee. But, Brick, this was a disappointing one based on the fact that, you thought they were starting to build something after the win over the Toronto Maple Leafs, a game in which they were much better. We talked about some of the problems that have plagued the Bruins for the first 9 games of the season going into the game against the Flyers. They cleaned some of those up the game before against the Leafs in terms of, staying out of the penalty box a little bit, also not turning the puck over as much. They looked like they were making better decisions. They took advantage of a power play opportunity in that game against the Maple Leafs. They came back from 2 deficits against the Leafs, and they won in overtime with Brad Marchand scoring his first goal of the year. And you're thinking that they might be able to carry that over into the game against the Flyers, but it didn't materialize. What did you see as some of the problems against Philly on Tuesday night?
Yeah, lack of execution, and they played slow because that execution wasn't there, and they weren't thinking the game fast enough, and that's bothersome. what are we, 10 games into the season now, 8th of the season, and you're looking for those signs of growth. And what an opportunity they had to build off that victory over Toronto. It should have been a feel-good victory. There were a lot of things that were positives from that game, and you come in and play a team that's given up all kinds of scoring chances, high-danger chances. They're not a great defensive team. We saw Philly, and give them credit, they sold out, meaning, they were blocking shots and getting in lanes, and 5 guys collapsed into the slot, and they knew they had a chance to win because Boston didn't have their A game, and they took advantage of it. And how many times have we said already in 10 games, this was a very winnable game? The Bruins should have taken points out of this game, and we shouldn't have to say that. It was a game that the Bruins should have won, and then you take a look at their power play. If you have one element of the game that can turn your game around and get you to play better and play smarter and play faster, it's probably your power play, and those are your top guys. They have that 5-on-3, and their top guys are encouraged to play the full minute 20, and you're not even getting really good looks. You're not getting enough quality scoring chances. You're not even scoring, and you're letting Philadelphia hang around. You put that team down 1-0, 2-0, I guarantee you that's 2 points in the bank, and that's the stuff that gets a little bothersome, But we did ask Monty, Adam, after the game, and you heard his interview, and we said, one step forward, one step back, and he said not a full step back because he thought he saw enough positive signs in some of the things that they did, but he was still bothered by, the lack of production and the lack of good play on the power play and their lack of, just having more will, desire to get inside ice when a team collapses to the slot like that. So those are the areas of concern because you're an under 500 team right now, and you don't want to be chasing the standings once you get into the middle of November, late November, and Boston needs better play from everybody across the board. I don't think you could pick one guy and said, he's been an excellent player every time he's laced the skates up for the Bruins this year. There are some guys that have been much better than others, and some of those others are some of the key guys that get to elevate their game, take a look in the mirror and say, I can do more, I can play better, and I'm going to. And that's the stuff that we're looking for. So the Philly game was bothersome because it came on the heels of what we thought was not a turning point, but something to build off in the win over the Leafs.
Yeah, it's sort of how you felt after the Colorado game when you went into Utah and you had a lead late and you're up 1-0, right? It's just like looking like you had something to build on, and at the end of the day, you kind of not back to square one, but you still have some things you need to clean up. And Hampus Lindholm had talked in the room after the game, and this is what he had to say about trying to get back on track.
Something's not really going your way, you try to look at everything. Sometimes it's the simple stuff that's going to get you out of it. Try to go to hard areas, put puck in good spots, and it's a funny game. Sometimes the puck just keeps finding you and going in the net, and I think we need to simplify a little bit, move that puck, let the puck do the work, and put pucks to the net. Good things usually happen, and go to hard areas.
Guys overthinking a little bit. There seems to be some hesitancy.
Yeah, I think that's normal when you're struggling offensively. You kind of hold that stick. Maybe you don't just, like I said, it's usually when you're on a hot streak, you just take that puck and you snap it right away. You don't really think. This game comes much easier when you just play on your intuition out there, and I think we can stick in going back to that, but also take ownership. We know it's not gonna, no one's gonna hand it to you for free in this league. You're gonna have to work for it, and start at the right end by maybe winning your battle, and then go from there and take the puck to the net instead of maybe try to get that tap in, because that doesn't happen in this league. You're gonna have to work for it, and get that mindset on everyone in here and do it as a team. And that's how we get out of it.
Brick, you're a baseball guy, so I'll use a baseball analogy here. When you're struggling at the plate and can't figure it out, what do? You try to simplify your swing a little bit, right? You might, shorten up, try to go the other way, get a blooper to fall into right field if you're a right-handed hitter, something just to get you going, simplify things. Hampus Lindholm is talking about simplifying the game. What is he talking about?
High percentage plays. Move the puck quick. Move it to the open guy, the short, effective 10, 12-foot pass. Don't look for the home run. Don't try to pass it through somebody. Don't think there's a better play I can make here because I'm that good. Just make the high percentage play. Move the puck. Get it to the open man. Create 2-on-1s. Overload guys. To me and to us, it's simple. Up on the 9th floor, you watch it, and then you see, somebody's trying to force something that's not there. Now it's a turnover. Players are out of position. Now you're forced to defend. That's what he's talking about. I love everything Hampus said in his quotes in that interview. I agree 100%. And he's one of the guys that's in that category, Adam, because if you're looking for the most important players, what do you look at? Time on ice, right? And he's one of your leaders time on ice. He's going to play in just about every situation. He's going to be on the second power play. He's going to be a prime penalty killer. He's going to play 5-on-5. He's going to play in all those situations. And he's a guy you rely on. And he's a talented guy. He's got great skill set. And if he simplifies his own game, he's going to be dynamic. We've seen it. We know he can do it. He's capable of it. And he's one of the guys that's going to help the Bruins play to the level that they're capable of playing.
All right, one of those things that we were talking about, we have been since the start of the year, really, is the power play. Again, you mentioned the 5-on-3 opportunity early in that game against the Flyers. Looking for the Bruins to capitalize. They just haven't been able to do it. They're 6 for 42 on the year, 14.3%, 3 for 27 at home. That's just over 11%. From my untrained eye watching the power play the other night, it just seemed like there wasn't a lot of movement. There wasn't a lot of, they weren't adapting to what was to the Flyers penalty kill. What did you see?
Yeah, well, your untrained eye is spot on. I think most players, like a Pasternak, like a Marchand, I think they play their best when they're moving. I think their brains work better when they're moving because they think less and they just play a reactionary sport and they go off their creative juices. And they've played enough together in a man-up situation, whether it's one man or two man, to really be on the same page without have to diagram plays. So I think if there's more movement, more creativity, less design, less predictability, the results come. And I think they just kind of went box and one on that 5-on-3 and just kind of moved it around, look for a one-timer, try to find the guy in the slot, maybe a backdoor play. But there's very few players that can dominate in this league and put up a ton of points standing still. And I always point to Mario. He's one of the only guys I ever saw that could stand still and dominate a hockey game. But very few players could fit into that category. And the players know it. They know it. And I'm lost a little bit for an explanation as to why they just don't get moving more and be less structured. Most of the time you want structure. Here's structure. Yeah, of course. 5-on-5. You need structure. You need structure to the game. That's how you play. But when you get in a 5-on-3 and you got your top offensive guys out there that when they are creative and they are thinking less, they're dynamic. And all of a sudden you're finding the back of the net. That's what we were looking for on that 5-on-3. And it came at a good time to get the lead early in the hockey game and put a team that struggles down and make it seem like it's going to be a hard night to come back and beat the Bruins, and you get nothing out of it. You don't even build momentum to carry over 5-on-5. And it was bothersome because those guys can score. You have your best players out there. They're capable of putting one or two up in that situation. And they got stationary, and it was lengthy. It was minute 27 maybe a 5-on-3 time, and
yep,
yeah. So that's it's a work in progress. It's got to get better. And we asked Monty after the game. He said power play's got to be better. We said, better how? And that's what he was saying. That's what he talked about. We can't stand still and expect to be a triangle 2-on-1 isolating power play because it just doesn't work. The penalty killers in this league are too good.
Yeah, I know we talk about mixing up the lines, and they've done that quite a bit. Not the fourth line. Top line has remained intact for the most part. It's the second and third lines. We're not going to get into that today. I'm just using that as a jumping off point to what I want to say next. And I know you're not the head coach.
Have a Snickers. Have a Snickers. It's Halloween.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But do you mix up the units a little bit? And I know we saw, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we saw Brazo at the net front, one of the later power plays in replace of Pavel Zacha. I'm not sure if my eyes were deceiving me at that point. I thought I had seen that. Maybe he was going off as part of the change into the second. I'm not sure. But do you mix things up? Maybe Hampus Lindholm quarterbacks the power play, tries to get, I don't know. Is that how you can maybe get things going? Because, we talk about mixing up the lines as maybe providing some kind of jolt. Do you do that with the power play units?
No, I'm going just the opposite. I'm going back to what I thought at the beginning of the year, what I believe are the best combinations, what's going to give me the best chance to win. The optics haven't been good to this point, but I'm going to go with what I think who belongs with who in terms of line combinations and D pairs. The guys that I believe will, pull us out of this malaise or help us find our game, the leaders of this team, the top offensive guys, the top guys that earn the most ice time. Look, when you have extra plays, you got to get them in there. It's early in the season. You got to keep everybody interested. You got to get them in, get them out, whatever it might be. Then you want to reward guys for ice time. You have guys that come in and have one job. You want to play them. That fourth line was dominant for a long time. The first 6-7 7, 8 games, whatever it's been. I would go back to and stay with certain line combinations and let them play themselves into better play. I think that's the point that the Bruins are at right now, that if I keep putting that blender out there and spinning it and try to find some magical combination, I don't think that's the solution. Not right now. I put it right on the players and say, these are the guys that you should play with, that you should want to play with. Now figure it out.
All right. Well, that's the power play. And, the goaltending is something that we haven't talked about really a lot during the Bruins struggles, because it's been pretty good. And for the most part, it's been Jeremy Swayman. But we saw Joonas Korpisalo for the first time at home as he's making his Bruins home debut. It was his first start in 13 days. And Brick, he was very good. And that's an encouraging thing for the Bruins moving forward, right? Because that's a big question mark going into the year. For the last couple of years, we've had this great 1A combination in Linus Ullmark and Jeremy Swayman. And now it's Swayman and Korpisalo. And Korpisalo, very good against the Flyers.
Yeah, I'd put him in a category better than very good. I thought he was excellent in that win. I mean, that loss to the Flyers. Flyers didn't put a lot of volume on Korpisalo, but they probably had 7, 8 high danger, grade A chances at critical times in the hockey game when you needed a huge save. And he delivered. He looked like a confident guy in net, despite the fact that he hadn't had the net in quite a while. And I remember watching the game in Colorado. We didn't have it, so we kind of watched it as a fan. I mean, you're still an analyst when you're watching in the press box. And for the 2 periods, it was the fastest I think I saw the Bruins play. I thought they played really good in the first period against Colorado. They were moving, and I saw some of that in the win over Toronto, but we've seen very little of it through the first 10 games of the regular season. And I thought he had to be really good in the third period in Colorado when the Bruins kind of went pretty conservative and tried to protect the lead, and the game was still hanging in the balance till the empty netter by Beecher. So I thought Korpisalo was really good in that game, but I thought he was excellent in the loss to the Flyers. I mean, think of some of those saves that he made that kept his team right there. And we say it was a very winnable game for Boston, and part of the reason was because you had your goalie that was giving you that opportunity when you did make those bad breakdowns and give up those quality chances. So that's a great sign. And hopefully when a goalie like that plays well, and he knows he's only going to probably get the net at most 40% of the time, in a way, I think that helps build the bond between the two goalies. Like they both want the net, they both want to play. I mean, that's natural.
Because their roles are established, right?
Yeah. So now it's not a 50-50 split like you had with Ullmark. Maybe it's a 60-40. Maybe it's even a 70-30 in favor of Swayman, certainly based on the money and the age and where they are in their careers and, just the game plan that the Bruins have and the philosophical belief on, what's going to give them the best chance to win. So for him, Korpisalo, to play like that, I saw a nice exchange. You saw it too. The camera grabbed it when Korpisalo was over at the bench after he made that great right skate save on Bobby Brink early in the hockey game. And the exchange with Swayman, I'm like, I love that. That's great. They're building something there between the two of them. And when Korpisalo plays like that, I think it only enhances that bond.
Yeah, that was a hell of a save. He made a couple of outstanding saves. Another one on Garnet Hathaway that comes to mind on a breakaway, one of those high danger chances that the Flyers had.
Great glove hand, yeah.
Yep, no question about that. And so, Brick, I guess the question is, in terms of the rotation, we know that Swayman's going to have, when I say rotation, I'm looking ahead more to this weekend against Flyers again, right? You get the first back-to-back of the year. You figure he's going to get one of those games. You think you'd rather see him face the Flyers again, or do you give him a different look with Swayman? How do you what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, the question is, how many days do you want in between Swayman starts? I think that's where you begin. You talk to the goalie, Swayman, and what's his desire. You talk to goalie Bob, get his opinion. How much do you value? Do you want your number one in there against Carolina? I say yes, I want my number one. So I think Swayman should play against Carolina and then come back with Korpisalo against Philly. We'll see how it shakes out, but I'm more concerned about, the other 18 players right now, Adam, to tell you the truth. I think whoever's in nets, they're going to give us a chance because I like both of them. I think Korpisalo is a good goalie if he plays on a good team with defensive structure. I really believe that. And the way he played against Philadelphia certainly proves that he's got the capability to be a very good goalie. That being said, I'm concerned about the other 18. I need a better team performance in front of who's ever in between the pipes. And that's where my concern is. That's where I spend most of my time thinking about this team and what needs to change and where the emphasis needs to be from this coaching staff to get this team to play faster, think faster, execute better, special teams improvement, all of the stuff all the boxes that need to be checked. And that's the challenge right now for the Bruins coaching staff, to get these guys to a point where they believe in what they're doing and in each other. And I guess the good news is that they're hanging around 500, and some people are starting to get some separation maybe at the top of the division. I don't like that, so don't fall too far behind. Find your game and start banking some points.
Under 500 through 10 games for the first time since the 2011-2012 season. And you would have to figure some of that might have been a Stanley Cup hangover from the year before, maybe the slow start in the following year, but they did end up making the postseason. They were 3-7 through 10 games that year. I was looking at the ice, Brick, and just to my right, I could see somebody in the stands, and I was wondering what was going through his mind. And that, of course, was the great Jack Edwards, who was at the game on Tuesday night, and he will be back on Sunday as well, as the Bruins recognize him. It'll be Jack Edwards night at the Garden. It'll be a lot of fun to have Jack back in the booth. And, it's just every time I see Jack, I smile, man. He's a hell of a guy and a hell of a character and a legend, Rick. And, I'm looking forward to seeing him on Sunday.
Yeah, I didn't know where you were going when you said you saw somebody in the crowd down to your right. And then it dawned on me where you were going. I had a chuckle. Always a pleasure to see Jack. Always fun to be in his company. Over the years, the 20 years we were together, people would ask me whether it was a charity golf tournament or just any social setting, what's Jack like? What's he really like? Is he like he is on the air? And you try to explain, the essence of Jack Edwards, and it's just, it makes you smile, it makes you laugh, it makes you think. He was such a great conversationalist. We could talk about anything, You spent a lot of time together on the road, a lot of downtime. We talked a lot of hockey, obviously, but we talked a lot of life and the experiences that he's had. He's a fascinating guy, and he's interested in all things life, whether it's politics or sports or whatever it might be. And he's certainly opinionated. And we weren't on the same side of the argument in a lot of cases, which made for great conversations. But he was such a dynamic personality, and that's what I try to tell people. And I would tell him, if he was here right now, you would be not only entertained, but you'd be educated, and you would have enjoyed the moments you spent with Jack, because that's the way he was. That's the way he made you feel good about being in his company. And I'm glad. It's nice to see he got his hair cut. He looked pretty sharp.
Yeah, it was nice and tight, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, during the pandemic, I had to look at him in that mask for like a year and a half, and his hair was halfway down his back. I'm like, "What are you doing?"
Oh man, what an absolute beaut he is. That's so
no, but Sunday will be great. 5:00 start against Seattle, so it's a nice start. And not only will the people in the building get to recognize him, good on the Bruins to make this happen. Nesson can recognize him. All of Boston and Bruins Nation can recognize him, and then we'll be able to spend some time together, not only in the booth but post game. And it'd be great to see his family and celebrate, the great contributions that he's made, not only to the game, but to this Boston Bruins franchise.
Yeah, no question about that. And just for me, growing up, in Boston, outside of Boston, and watching local news over the years. I mean, I grew up watching Jack Edwards, local news stations in Boston.
Right.
ESPN, right? And then hearing him call Bruins games, and then getting an opportunity to work with him. And it was pretty surreal to have that, and yourself as well, because again, growing up here and watching you play and watching Jack on TV, and then being a part of the Bruins team, it was really special.
Well, stories for another time, Adam. But I met Jack when I was in college the first time,
right.
And then when I had one of my major injuries and it looked like my career was over, I went over and shadowed Jack for a day when he was the weekend anchor at Channel 7. So we can discuss that at another time. But after all those years ago when we met and spent some time together, we ended up being partners for almost 20 seasons.
Yeah, maybe we'll have those stories next time you're on the Hockey Hub podcast. podcast, and we can talk about our time with Jack on Sunday. But well, Brick, we'll let you go. I know you got to get ready for the game against the Carolina Hurricanes, and hopefully the Bruins are able to bounce back. So we'll see you next week. Thanks for being on once again, my friend.
All right, happy Halloween. Have a few M&Ms, maybe a $100,000 bar, maybe a Charleston Chew, but, don't overdo it.
There you go. I was going to ask you for the candy. I think we may have answered that question. All right, Brick, thanks a lot. We're going to switch gears now, talk some Hockey East and the Providence College men's hockey team. Billy Jaffe caught up with head coach Nate Leaman.
All right, well, our first time this year to catch up with Providence College and head coach Nate Leaman. Nate, as always, it is awesome to see you. Your team has started out well on this season. What have you liked so far about your team as they've gotten to the initial couple of weeks of the NCAA season?
I like our playmaking. I like our skating. I like the way we've been able to come through in big moments in games. I don't think we've played, kind of perfect hockey by any means, but, I think we've played good road hockey. We've been tested on the road now. We've had one home series, and, I like what we're seeing at this point. I mean, we're still very much a growing, team where there's a lot of growth there to be had throughout the year with 13 new players and a lot of the young guys that we're playing. But, it's for the most part, I like what we're seeing.
Speaking of going on the road, you guys did a one-gamer in North Dakota, almost 12,000 people in that beautiful building there. What was that experience like for your young team?
I mean, it was great. I mean, I found out afterwards, some of our freshmen said they were shaking during the game. I didn't really see that. I mean, it was a good experience for us to go on the road. Now, I wish we would have been a little more, I don't think we were great in that game as far as our battle level, and we got out battled that game. But I liked, again, I liked our playmaking. I liked how much we had the puck. I liked our skating ability, so I liked the overall talent and the makeup of the group. But that was a good game for us to be tested on the road early, for us to be in that environment. And I like the way our team, kind of came back in that game.
You mentioned talent, and you do have a lot of talent this year, in particular in your freshman class. I've got it listed as 9 freshmen on your roster right now, Nate. You also have 8 grad players on your roster. So you got that kind of young and old mix right there. Let's start with the youngsters and what they bring to your team and the importance of this freshman class, Coach.
Stick skill, talent, ability, playmaking. Obviously, with 3 kids drafted in the top 3 rounds, we know those guys were going to come in and make an impact. And it's kind of what our team's been missing. I don't think, over the past couple of years, what our team has been missing has been anything, hard work or possession time or face. I mean, we've won the trenches. We've outshot our opponents. We've given up the most or the fewest shots in the nation last year. So the foundation was there. We just didn't have the maybe some of the stick skill and finishing ability that we needed to finish plays. And I think those guys bring that. And I think that class, there's depth in the class. Like Will Elger had 2 goals last week, and both were really nice goals. And he's someone that no one really knows about or is talking about, but he's come in and he's played well also.
And you also have these 8 graduate students on the roster as well. So having the experience of them, I know, is important. Are there 1 or 2 players, Coach, that really are making a difference early on in the season for your team?
Guillaume Richard and Nick Poisson. I mean, the older guys give you the ability to stay with your game. And that's what, they give you that, we get scored on first. We're not going to unravel. We're not going to fall apart. We're going to stay with our game. We're mature. We're older. We just keep sticking with what we're doing. And that's what they've kind of brought in the leadership, preparing the young guys. But Nick Poisson, he had 2 big goals on last week, and one was to tie it. When we pulled the goalie, the other one was a game winner in overtime. He's going to make plays. Chase Yoder is center in our first line. He's logging the most minutes for forwards, and then Guillaume Richard he's kind of our rock on defense. Logs the most minutes, and I think is probably the guy that makes the most plays back there.
You also have 2 veterans in net. In that you have Svedback back again. And you also have Zach Borgil, who came in as one of those veteran players. So far, it seems, relatively speaking, an even split. Is that the plan moving forward? And how happy have you been with the goalies?
I've been happy. I mean, it's, we need to get to a 920 save percentage. That's the other key stat. I mean, if you look at our team the past couple of years, we're off by, we usually score about 125 goals a year. We've been at about 110. Now our save percentage has always been around the 920s. We've been at a 900 flat for the past 2 years. That has to improve for us to be in the hunt for national championships. And that's what we want for our program. That's what we expect for our program. And I think Zach coming in, now we have a viable second option. And I think we put a lot on Philip's shoulders the first 2 years. And I think Zach can kind of take some of that weight away. We're coming into this series with UNH where we have a 7:00 and we come back the next day on short rest, 4:30 with 2.5 hours of travel in between. This is going to be tough. I anticipate us using both guys this weekend, and, it allows you to kind of have one fresh guy, and it allows those guys to kind of focus on one game right now until we roll into maybe one guy. We'll see.
And lastly, you just brought up UNH. We've got both games on Nesson this weekend, so we're looking forward to having that. This is a team that is definitely in UNH, started to turn the corner, starting to become a very viable opponent after some leaner times. It's part of the biz. It happens here and there. What are you expecting out of your competition this weekend with UNH?
Good transition. Good transition. I think that the Convoy is a very good player. Leclerc, can score. Good transition team. They can skate. I watched the first Quinnipiac game, and although the score was lopsided, everything at Quinnipiac, it just went in the net. It was one of those nights for them, and for them to come back that second game on the road and to beat Quinnipiac, that kind of speaks about what they have in the room too. So, we're going to have our hands full this weekend. UNH is a very good team. They got a winning record, and this will be a good series.
It'll be a great series, and we are thrilled to have it on Nesson. Again, both games, both Friday and Saturday, will be on Nesson. Nate, always great to see. I know you're a busy man. We'll let you get going, but thanks for joining us here.
Thanks for having me, Billy.
That's Providence head coach Nate Leaman talking to our own Billy Jaffe as we continue our Hockey East spotlight now with Natalie, Noury, with more on the Friars. And Nate Leaman just picked up his 400th collegiate win, of course, with Union before his time with Providence, joining Providence in 2011, has had a lot of success there and has had some early success with this Friars team as well. Natalie, ranked number 12 in the country, a good start to the year. We heard some of it from the head coach, but what makes this Friars team so good so far?
Yeah, great to be back with you, Adam, first of all. Love talking about the Friars because I feel like this is a program that always kind of excites me to watch, especially when they play UNH. I feel like those games are always really tight battles. But I think Providence College this year has the missing piece that they have been looking for the past couple of years. And it was funny because Coach Leaman was talking to us, the media, earlier this week, and he said, this year is one of those years where I have to kind of sit back when I'm watching film and say, okay, let's not rush this, let's not get too excited, because he's looking for his team. He wants to see the finished product, but they're not there yet. He's like, this group has what we were missing, but I'm so excited to see what they can be that sometimes I have to slow myself down and say, okay, well, this is what we have. This is what we have to develop. And this is how we're going to get there. But I think what Providence has this year, they mentioned defensively, they were pretty sound last year. I think they gave up the fewest shots of the season last year, but up front, they had that issue just finishing chances. So what he talks about when he says, we have older returning players who can help us kind of keep the composure during games. They have that, competition mindset where you can dig yourself out of a hole. They came back from a 4-2 deficit against UVM on Saturday. So he said that older leadership really helps the group kind of stay in the moment. But then what you have with this younger group, the sophomores, the freshmen, 9 freshmen, that is, he said you have that skill. You have the ability to finish. And I think it's just one of those years where he says, we have a lot. And honestly, I think he's looking to see them climb the ranks throughout the season. Coaches, as you know, Adam, coaches aren't very in tune with the rankings, the numbers of everything. But I do think this is a year where Nate. That's what they say, but they've got it plastered all over the locker rooms, and this is where we want to get to be. But yeah, I do think this is a group that Nate Leaman is really excited about seeing develop throughout the year, and he's just trying to stay in the moment and not rush it too much. But I think it's going to be a really good finished product when we see it all come together.
Yeah, picked third in the Hockey East preseason poll, 3-1-1 so far this year, coming off a couple of tough games, and one where they had to come back against Vermont, down 2 goals. So showing some resiliency early. And you talked a little bit about the mix of freshmen, and you heard Coach Leaman talk about the grad students coming in. You have the return players as well. Is there anything or anyone in particular that people should be keeping an eye on this year in terms of individual players?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Leaman did a really nice job covering the bases there, but I think a couple players who kind of stuck out to me just watching the UVM series. I really liked seeing Logan Sawyer, the freshman. He's on a left wing this past weekend with trying to remember, get the line chart here. Logan Will and Ryan O'Reilly, 2 transfers, but 2 guys who bring a lot of experience. So the fact that Logan Sawyer was playing such a composed game, he really did a nice job with the puck on his stick. He found space, he found time, and he was able to make plays happen with those 2. What was funny is Logan Will was playing kind of banged up this past weekend, but to see him playing banged up, he was still competing at an exceptional level. So I think those 3 together, that third line, but we won't call it the third line. Maybe we'll say the Logan Will line, Logan Sawyer line. I thought they looked really good. As for another freshman who stood out to me, Will Elger, he's the Hockey East Player of the Week this year. He had a goal in each of the UVM games. But something I really like about him, and something that we've heard the coaching staff say, is when he's on the ice, he has really good vision, and he does a nice job executing what he sees in his head and just kind of making art on the ice. And I think that's something you can see with him. He's young, he's big, he's 6'2", and he's only a freshman. So from that starting point, I think he's going to do a really nice job stepping into that role and just developing. But as freshmen, they have a lot to learn. They have a new speed to adjust to, a new strength to adjust to, of course. But I think those 2 really did a great job this past weekend. I am really excited about the sophomore class, Adam, because I think this is a class that has a lot of chemistry. They have a lot of personality. And I guess, I want to share a story here. It was kind of funny. I asked Nate Leaman in preparation for the games this week, and I said, what about this sophomore class is so fun to coach? And he started laughing, and he's like, I'm going to share a story with you because why not? He said it was summer camp, summer school. It was like Hudson Malinowski, Andrew Centrella, Tanner Adams. They came in one day for skate, morning lift. And Nate Leaman said to them, he was like, wow, you guys look pretty rough. What'd you do last night? And the 3 of them looked at each other and they said, well, we thought it would be kind of funny to push our mattresses together in the living room and have a slumber party. So they took all the mattresses out of their rooms, put them in the living room, and thought it would be funny to have a slumber party. But just kind of funny to see these 20-year-olds. It's like 20-year-old going on 13. But the fact that these, the sophomore class is so close, those are the type of guys who are going to be your best men at your wedding. But again, they bring a ton of skill, ton of scoring depth. Tanner Adams already has a hat trick this year. But you can see the chemistry in that class alone and the future that it's going to provide the Friars. I think that's going to be really great to watch. Just the younger group of players develop here.
All I could think of was Step Brothers, even though they moved the beds together. All I could think of was bunk beds, so much room for activities. But that's cool, though. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
That's a group of players who are going to come up together for, however many years, if they stay in school for the entire 4 years, which would be pretty cool. They're going to be, like you said, friends for life. And that's what, you develop in college when you play athletics. It's like you develop this lasting bond with your teammates. You can go, and just speaking from somebody who was, a former college athlete who, I haven't seen a lot of these guys, we'll go years without talking to each other or even, seeing each other. But a recent example, we just got together it was a Hall of Fame induction ceremony. My baseball coach got inducted into the University Hall of Fame, and a bunch of us got together.
Yeah,
and it was like we and we just start ripping on each other. It was unbelievable. It's like we hadn't talked in years, but here we go, picking up right where we left off. That's what I immediately thought of when you talked about those that sophomore class getting together. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
I know. You could be.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, as 20 years old in college, you could be doing anything during a summer night, but putting your mattresses together, having a slumber party as boys. I just think I text them already, the SID there. I said, we're going to need a graphic visual to support the story when we tell it on air, because we need to paint the picture further. But I know it's great. It's cool to hear those stories, how close they are, and the friendships last a lifetime, as you're talking about. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes we do these segments and we talk about, and again, like, they're serious athletes and they're trying to play at the next level. The majority of them, you forget that they're like, 19, 20 years old. They're college kids. Yeah. They're also trying to have fun too. So, there's that aspect, and it's, and not to minimize, it's a very important part of the college experience as well. So good to hear they're having a little bit of fun. One of the things we're talking about with the Bruins is their struggles on the power play. They're 6 for 42 to start the year. They're still trying to figure things out. Providence, you talk about a lot of the upside with this team. Well, so far, just for 10 on the power play. What can they do to sort of fix things?
Yeah, well, you know what? They're dealing with a couple injuries right now, which are kind of hurting them, I guess, in a way. Obviously, first round draft pick, and Trevor Connolly, he is a weapon on the power play, someone that always has a target on his back when he goes out there, but he's out right now. They are hopeful that he will return for the Northeastern series, so that's not this weekend coming up against UNH, but Northeastern will be after that. So Trevor Connolly hopefully comes back that weekend, but they've had to move some pieces around in his absence and find some people to kind of fill the gaps in a way. And I think the hard part about it right now is you look at two things here. They only had I think they've only had maybe 10 power play opportunities this entire season so far, and against two of the best penalty killing teams in the country, top 10 in UVM and Arizona State. So not only is it hard to get the puck past a penalty kill like that, but it's also difficult when you're struggling to find some kind of chemistry on your own power play. As well as people who can kind of step up into the role of those positions. So, although Nate Leaman was kind of vague about what his game plan was in the power play situation here, I think there are a couple of things working against them, in the fact that some injuries are playing a role with who they typically use, and the fact that they're not getting a lot of penalties or a lot of power play opportunities per game. He said, it's been hard for us to kind of find our groove. It's been hard for us to kind of find any kind of chemistry on the power play, just because we haven't had the opportunity to practice it too much in game-like situations. So I think this is one of those situations where it's not a finished product. I think once Trevor Connolly comes back next weekend, I think they'll be able to kind of re-rack, reload, and kind of figure out where they can really bring the pressure on those power play situations. But yeah, I think it's just kind of a situational thing for them right now. It's not that it's never going to go in. It will, and I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later. But yeah, they're playing UNH again this weekend, and UNH is a pretty disciplined team. I think both Providence and UNH have only taken 17 penalties the entire season so far. So, there's not a ton of opportunities that might arise in Durham or Providence this weekend, for that matter. But yeah, I think it will start picking up for the Friars soon, especially getting Connolly back, and then trying to find a way to practice that a little more in game situations. But it'll go in for them. I have hope.
Yeah, well, good. I'm glad you have hope. So you got the matchup. You got the matchup against UNH, and you touched on it a little bit. Both games you can see on NESN, which is great. The home and home. We heard him talk about the goaltending situation. Probably going to see both goalies there, including Philip Svedback, who's back with the Friars, the 4th round pick of the Boston Bruins. What do we expect to see? You mentioned a little bit, there are two disciplined teams going head to head.
Yeah, and I think that's That's the funny thing about coming into this series is Nate Leaman is looking for the Friars to finish their chances a little more. Meanwhile, UNH is returning a very skilled, strong, tall veteran decor. So not only are the Friars going to have to figure out how to practice that depth and really crash the net and finish their chances, they're going to have to find a way around a very familiar decor. And that's going to be the biggest challenge. And I think that's going to be, I mean, I can't predict what the score is going to be, but that's where I think the biggest challenge is going to be for both teams is holding back this young, skilled, hungry Friars lineup while also using your size, your ability in your D zone to figure it out. Also, UNH is usually pretty good on the penalty kill, so I'd be interested to see if the Friars do get a power play, how that matches up. But the story in my mind is how the UNHD and the Providence offense are going to go head-to-head this weekend. I think as far as the overall series, Providence and UNH is always a series that I look forward to. I feel like at least one game in the series is always an overtime. I hate to use that word already, but it's always an OT thriller, I feel like. But the past couple of years you look at, they play each other, maybe 3 times a year, and there's 1 win, 1 loss, and 1 tie for each team. So it's always pretty evenly matched. I feel like the favor has kind of been with the Friars, but you know what? I think, again, it's just going to come down to special teams, how well they can execute, and if the UNH defense can hold back what the Friars are trying to do around the net. So, I think it's going to be evenly matched, but I think it's going to be a great series to put on NESN, actually, because I think this is something that a lot of people tune into. Providence always has a lot of national recognition, I think even more so as the year goes on. So stay tuned this weekend, and I think it's going to be a really, really good battle on both rinks.
UNH at Providence on Friday at 7 and Providence at UNH Saturday at 4:30, both games on NESN. Happy Halloween, Natalie.
Happy Halloween, Adam. Is this your favorite holiday?
Oh, well, no, but it's my wife's favorite holiday. Yeah, my wife actually, she goes, and so as a product of that, it is my one of my favorite holidays. And we go all out. It's a lot of fun. Unfortunately, I am working, this Halloween, but hey, working a Bruins game is not the worst in the world, right? So I'm doing pre and post game tonight. The Bruins are in Carolina, take on the Hurricanes. Do you have a Halloween costume? Are you ready to rock?
You know what? I feel like this is the first year that I don't. I'm at the age now where I kind of just want to hang out, hand out candy to the kids, and kind of see what they're doing now. I feel like the costumes are getting more expensive, but more. I know. You know what? I'm Halloweening on a budget this year, Adam. But you know what? One of my favorite costumes, I created this shirt that said social on it, and then I wore butterfly wings because I was a social butterfly. And the punny costumes are my favorite. I do like those. They're silly. How about you?
So there you go. So you don't have to spend a lot of money on these costumes. You can just create something because you've done it in the past. Yeah. So what you're telling me, it's not a financial situation. It's it sounds like a lack of motivation on your part, to be honest with you.
Are you calling me lazy, Adam? But you know what? I might be a little bit lazy.
Maybe lack of
motivation.
Yeah,
you know what? I live in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and they always do a really nice family parade downtown. And they always have zombies dress up and perform the Michael Jackson Thriller right down in Market Square in downtown Portsmouth. It's a really cool spectacle. But yeah, you know what? I've got work all weekend too, so we might keep it easy and give out Reese's peanut butter cups and all the good stuff at my house. So,
all right. Well, find some time to celebrate a little bit. I know we will be doing a little bit, and I have a 9-year-old daughter, so she's going to be dressing up as a vampire this year. So I'm looking forward to seeing the costume and stuff. So anyway, happy Halloween to you. Thanks for your coverage of Hockey East, as always. In this case, the Providence College men's hockey team again in action this weekend against UNH, both games on NESN. Thanks, Natalie. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. That'll wrap things up for the Hockey Hub. Thanks again to Andy Brickley for joining us. We will see you on Tuesday. Judd Surratt on the program. See you then.